Thank you for tuning in to watch our Invest Boston 2023 launch conference. You're about to watch our closing keynote, Lauren Jones, the Secretary of the Massachusetts Executive Office for Labor and Workforce Development. Enjoy.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, good to know everyone's still awake. I know it's been a full morning. I really appreciate the opportunity to join you and help close out what I think has been, what sounds like a very productive set of panels and full agenda. And I know you've been really thinking about coming together here, thinking about our competitiveness, how we can drive more affordability and equity in the Commonwealth. So I appreciate the opportunity to join you and share some perspective in the seat that I wear as part of the Healy-Driscoll administration. Earlier this year, I had the pleasure of coming in as the governor's Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development. And I know in this role, top of mind is driving greater competitiveness, driving greater affordability, driving more equity. And for me, as I think about the huge responsibility that I have in thinking about our workforce agenda, I know that we have to be mindful and intentional about the people that help to make your workforces tick, your communities thrive. And so that's really at the heart of the agenda that I'm helping to shape. But I know for me to be successful in shaping an agenda, it has to be reflective of rooms and communities like gathered here today. So I appreciate the opportunity to join you and help to close out what has been a full day. Certainly as we think about the people, like I mentioned, who make up our workforce today, we realize that there's also the untapped talent that is either here today or rising in our ranks for our future workforce. It could be the individual that has not realized what their next shot may be. They may want to pivot in their career. They may realize what they're doing right now is not giving them that joy, and they want to find a path to pursue. It may also be that young person who's studying in our schools, our K through 12 education system, and hasn't gotten that exposure, but definitely needs greater exposure to all the innovation that's happening in our cities, like from Boston to Worcester to Pittsfield and all places in between. And we also want to make sure that we are very intentional about thinking about individuals who are disconnected from our workforce. People who have been discouraged, most recently because of the pandemic, or have felt like they haven't been able to see themselves in our workforce and in our economy. And so as we think about how we can best fuel the workforce that we need today as well as for our future, I realize that we need to make sure we do this very collaboratively. Out of the gate, coming in as secretary, I've been trying to be very intentional and making sure that I find places and spaces to listen, to learn from others, and how that can help shape the work that's ahead. A big part of that listening and learning is really certainly the collaboration that is underway through the team that Governor Healy has put together. And part of that work is underway, and I appreciate it. But I also know for building out that agenda, it really takes an extension into our local and regional communities. So I appreciate also some in the room who I've been able to work with already, as well as so many other workforce partners that are may not be represented here. I will put a plug. If you want to get plugged in, we would love for that partnership as well. As we think about how we can take on some really important priorities to build the workforce that we need, a few things rise to the top. First and foremost, we know that we need to close the workforce skills gap. This is exactly why we've continued to build out, the Healy-Driscoll administration has continued to build out the workforce skills cabinet. So I find myself working alongside the Secretary of Education, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, which we added to our skills cabinet, and then also making sure our Secretary of Economic Development is part of this as we all bring together at the intersection of our respective areas, knowing that talent is always top of mind in any room that we are respectively going into, and being more intentional about how we can work collaboratively to lift up existing state resources, but also our respective stakeholders to make sure that we're thinking about that pipeline and driving that agenda. We also know, as we think about competitiveness, which I know has been part of today's conversation, we're seeing trends of out-migration. And so how can we think about maintaining our competitiveness and certainly thinking about our values as to why people choose to live, work, and innovate here in Massachusetts. And we want to make sure that we emphasize and really beat that drum to explain those values. We know that people choose to be in Massachusetts because we are a Commonwealth where we can access quality health care, including reproductive rights, innovate to solve some of the world's most challenging and complex healthcare issues and life-saving solutions that are happening right here. And certainly we are also a Commonwealth that cares about our existing residents, the untapped talent that I've referred to that make up our neighborhoods and communities, and our new arrivals that are coming to the Commonwealth. We want to make sure that they have an opportunity to gain meaningful employment and be part of our local and regional economies. But fundamentally, we also know that as a strategy, we need to think about who are those partners that are helping to get things done. And I know a big part of that partnership includes the business community. As I think about how can we build a more robust workforce agenda, we need to deepen our relationships with business. Certainly you and those in the business community and those across industry know the issues that are top of mind. And we need to make sure that as we shape curriculum for training, as we shape new pathways and opportunities, it's built on the feedback that we get from what employers are looking for today. We also know that we are really strong with many state dollars that have been put to bear on workforce development. So that's why we need to make sure that we're curating and being more intentional about bringing together collaborations across local and regional communities. We have state funding. We're appreciative of the state funding that we've been able to receive and some of the federal relief that we've received specifically for workforce development in recent years. But now we need to be more intentional to create more scale and effectiveness to use those dollars in more impactful and meaningful ways. And I think making sure that folks in the room here know of the tools that are in our toolbox, because we really want to make sure that it's not just the state's toolbox, but it truly becomes your toolbox. Whether that's thinking about creating registered apprenticeship programs, I see Kathleen here from the Mass Banking Association, or thinking about our workforce competitiveness trust funds that include workforce partners from academia and training providers in the nonprofit community to employers. Any of our programs that we invest in, it has employers at the table. It has our academic and workforce partners at the table, but we really want to make sure that employment is part of that outcome. And so making sure that we have feedback from industry, feedback from employers as we invest in not just Boston, but our Commonwealth is so key. So I know that you've had a full agenda, but I will share just a few other highlights as to why we want to make sure that we are building the strong workforce that we need. At the end of the day, we know that for people to live here, it has to be affordable, it has to be competitive, as I mentioned, and I know that the governor believes that as well. And I just want to highlight a few things that have been most recent from some activity coming out of the administration to make sure you're aware of as you think about the tools in your toolbox and how we can leverage things within our communities. But certainly recognizing the cost of living as a barrier for working in Massachusetts. Just last month, Governor Healy signed into law the first significant tax relief for residents in 20 years. The governor also, just in the last couple of weeks, along with Secretary Augustus, introduced a $4.1 billion Affordable Homes Act that represents the largest proposed investment in housing in generations and strikes at the root causes that we know hinder production and affordability. And I share these highlights. It's not necessarily within my direct portfolio, but I want to make sure that as I think about our workforce, I also tout the support and efforts across the governor's cabinet, because it really will help to drive what motivates and keeps talent here and helps to attract talent to come here as well. And so I'll just wrap on this note, knowing that you guys are just at the tail end of your convening. When you go back to your respective areas of work, I want to make sure to emphasize the why. And again, closing out with thinking about that why, it's the people. And so as we think about the different types of efforts that we embark on, the conversations that have been happening today with the 3 panels that you've had. I'm imagining that I caught the tail end with the one with Dr. Johnson. I imagine that people are going to be really at the heart of that. And I know that that's not lost on me. It's what I think about every day. It's what I think about when we celebrated Registered Apprenticeship Week last week and we saw all the amazing people that have been able to find pathways to employment, whether it's in the building trades or expanded areas like healthcare, finance, biotech. I think about the people when we leverage state investments like in our workforce training fund so we can upskill our existing talent, whether that be in English language for those who do not have English as their first language, or empowering people with new skills so they can advance within their existing companies. And so I continue to think about the people that will be our workforce today as well as the future, and I hope that you leave today recognizing all the things that you probably have as takeaways from today's conference. You realize that what can motivate and support the workforce that we need at the end of the day is our people, and we want to make sure that we lift up all opportunities for our people here in Massachusetts and the future talent that we know we need to invest in. So thank you for the opportunity to share a few words and to help close out your session today. I appreciate the opportunity to represent the administration and just share a little bit about what we're doing, and hopefully it helps to cap off what has been an exciting and full agenda. Thank you.